hope everyone's having a good time. My name is Mike Myatt. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at the IGFA, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the second annual Legendary Captain and Crew Award. Before we start tonight, I have some people to thank. I'm going to be the shortest part of the program tonight, and we're probably going to end with the longest part of the program tonight, Mr. Bart Garnezy. I particularly want to thank our Board of Trustees, Mr. Pacquiao Field, and the rest of the board that worked so hard for us. I want to thank Mr. Rob Kramer, the president of IGFA. I would like to thank Mr. Mike Leach, who's in attendance tonight, with his lovely wife, Gussie, who was the president of IGFA for 23 years. We would not be able to do this without an incredible staff. And I would like to thank Joni and Gail for every single event that we do here. Lindsay and Don, who bolted the minute they could, and good on them. I would like to thank our great staff that works here every day behind the scenes that you don't see. John Hawley, who did a great job with the registration and things tonight. We would not be able to do events like this without our partners. And we don't use the word sponsor here at IGFA. We don't believe in it because the people that we've been doing business with has been long-standing relationships. We have two presenting sponsors here tonight, Mercury Marine, Scott Beatty, and you guys, you've been great to us. Thank you very much. They're over $100,000 a year to our education programs, and last year we put 42,000 children through our education programs here at IGFA. Costa Del Mar steps up for every single event that we do. They're involved with every single nonprofit in the state. Dave Bultice, thank you very much, my man. And there's a curious thing about Dave Bultice. Dave Bultice's father's youngest brother, who Dave has not seen since Dave has moved from Fort Lauderdale to Daytona, showed up tonight. They've spoken quite often, but they haven't seen one another. But Dave, could you guys stand up? Look at the shirts they chose. They did not talk to one another. I don't know what that says about the gene pool, but it probably needs some chlorine. I like my own jokes, too. So we also have three members of the inaugural class here with us tonight, three people last year that were honored with the Tommy Gifford Award. Charles Perry. Charles, could you stand up? CP, thanks for coming down. Alan Merritt. Alan. If you want to put a smile on your face, get outside just before Alan leaves this place because he does a jig all the way to the Swordfish. I'd also like to thank Charlie Hayden for coming down. Him and his wife Maggie came down. The dinner tonight is from one of our good partners, Hugh McCauley from Hugh's Culinary. He puts on great events all over the place. He's back there sweating right now, and I can't appreciate his friendship anymore. Thanks, Hugh. And for the next shout-out, I'm probably going to get a beating because he does not like to be recognized in public. But for years and years and years, Captain Skip Smith has been working tirelessly Thank you guys for ensuring I'm going to get that beating. But Captain Skip Smith has been working tirelessly for IGFA, the Billfish Foundation. He's putting on seminars. He made me work harder than Kramer makes me work all year. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciated his guidance and his help with all this, because without his credibility and without the great committee, which Mark Sosin's gonna talk about here in a minute, I don't think we'd be able to get this thing done. But I want to add one thing. 5 captain and crew members are going to be inducted in getting awards tonight. And what I'd like to say is that in every port, in every town, in every city, in every county, in every country across the world, we have these great captains. And if there's captains that you'd like to nominate, there's a process that we go through, and you'll be able to find that process on IGFA.org. And please, if there's in fact someone that you'd like to bring to our attention, add a bio, we'll put them on the list, and they'll be considered, because there's tens of thousands of well-equipped captains and crew members across the world, and there's only 5 so far that have got this great honor, and there's 5 more tonight. So it's truly something special. With that, I'd like to introduce one of my mentors. You've probably heard Rob Kramer say that, and you're probably going to hear other people say that. The gentleman's been around since, I believe, 1965 with CBS. He's written 25 or so hundred magazine articles. He's written 31 books. The 32nd book has something to do with the number 64 rubber band, but I can't blow that for him because I know that he's staring at me right now. He was, I believe, number 51 of the first 55 people inducted into the Hall of Fame. He works at every single one of our events. He's over here every single week. I can't speak enough about the generosity of his time and the wealth of information that Mr. Mark Sosin has showed us. So please give it up for our host tonight, Mr. Mark Sosin. He got to eat half his dinner, which is half more than he normally gets to eat at these events. So, thank you very much, Mark.
Got to make sure they left my notes up here. I'm certainly delighted to be here and to have this opportunity. You know, being chosen out of a great number of people where you're only 5 is just a marvelous thing. And I know when I got the call for the Hall of Fame from Rob Kramer, I was speechless, and I'm very seldom speechless. Ask my wife. The inductees are chosen by a committee of world-class captains. Included, in alphabetical order, Carl Anderson, Bobby Brown, Bart Garnezy, Steve Lashley, Charles Perry, Bouncer Smith, Skip Smith, Gary Stuve, Laurie Wright, and Peter Wright. And I can tell you that there is no greater honor in life than recognition by your peers. You can fool the public, you can fool the fishermen, you can fool a lot of people, but you can't fool your peers. So when you are honored by your peers, it's the greatest thing a person can have. Now let me tell you a little bit about Tommy Gifford, for whom this award is named. Gifford developed a reputation early in his career as one of the most innovative blue water anglers who ever lived, and one of the most successful. He became an American superstar and considered among the greatest charter skippers ever to guide anglers to the major game fishes of the sea. A young Tommy Gifford began his chartering career right here in Miami at the age of 23 in the year 1920. Within a few seasons, Gifford had made a reputation for himself. He was the first to develop spreader outriggers for use in the Atlantic, and the first to catch an Atlantic blue marlin with these devices. Although Tommy Gifford was not the first to bring a kite to the Atlantic, as some people think, he was so effective in using them that the majority of anglers were convinced that he had invented it. If you use a flying gaff or a star drag reel, the credit for these products goes to Tommy Gifford. He had an encyclopedic knowledge of game fish and techniques to catch them. He was a guide and consultant to some of the biggest names of that era in big game angling. Among them were Ernest Hemingway, Michael Lerner, Charlie Lehman, and Van Campen Heilner. Place names such as Havana, Wedgeport, Bimini, St. Thomas, and Montauk resonate with the angling fame he created there. Tommy Gifford never lost his zest for the sea or his awe of the creatures that lived beneath the waves. He was truly a legend in his time. At this point, I would like to introduce the man who will induct these people into the legendary Captains and Crew Hall of Fame here, or get the Tommy Gifford Award at least. And that is Captain Skip Smith, and you've already heard a lengthy description of what he's done. I fished with Skip a long time ago, and I can tell you that he is among the greatest I've ever fished with. His knowledge is incredible. He never takes credit for most of what he's done. And I just share one quick story with you. We were sail fishing off of Mexico one time, and we were talking about the color of lures. And he said, I'll tell you what, you pick any color lure you want, and I will catch a sailfish on it. So we came up with a combination of colors that you would not believe any self-respecting fish would eat. And I guarantee you in less than 15 minutes he had a sailfish on it. And it just showed his knowledge of handling that boat and making that lure work so effectively that the sailfish ignored the color and ate the lure. And with that, I'd like to introduce Captain Skip Smith.
Thank you, Mark.
Very kind words. Mark, you were an inspiration to a lot of us. I even watched your shows that many years ago. But you were a leader in the sport, and when it came to putting this event together, Mark was a big proponent of it. He's been fighting for the crews for many years, and he was a mentor to me in getting this put together. So there was a lot of people behind the scenes, but Mark was huge in promoting this event and getting it going. So Mark, thanks for everything you've done. First saltwater show on TV, everything you've taught us when we had to read your articles in Field of Stream or something, not Marlin or these things nowadays, but you were cutting edge then, and we really thank you for everything you do, Mark. Thank you. You know, and when you look at the captains, this isn't in the script, I gotta wing it. But when you look at the captains out there and you look at the list that we look at, it is incredible the talent over the years, the guys that have passed on, the guys that are still fishing, and the guys that really parted the wake for us to get us to where we are today. From the boat builders to the captains, you know, and they've covered every facet of the business, you know, from rigging baits, split-tailed Charlie, to building the boats, and it's just been incredible. And the decisions we come across, you know, when we're looking at these guys, and, you know, there's so many, you want to vote 100 of them in at one time. So we come across those decisions, and when we come up with these, it's so exciting to be able to get together, get their friends together, get fellow fishermen together, the families, and pay the respects that they do, that they've earned. So I'm really excited to be part of this tonight. The first guy that received the award tonight, it was real exciting. Here you got a guy that was a guide in Biscayne Bay, cutting edge, one of the first ones, Bill Curtis. Bill Curtis learned to fly cast at the age of 9. Trained as an aerial photographer in the Army Corps, he arrived in Miami in 1949 and began dividing his time between working, commercial photography, and fishing, Biscayne Bay. By 1958, Curtis was guiding full-time, a career that lasted until 2005 and made him a living legend in the world of light tackle and flats fishing. His innovations and contributions include the poling platform, the first production flats boats, the Hughes Bonefisher, the Superbug pink bonefish fly, and a leader connection system called the Curtis Connection. In the 1960s, he was the first guide to appear on the American Sportsman TV show. That episode featured Bill and Kurt Gowdy, permit fishing in the Keys. Before it aired, there were no flats guides in Key West. That show changed everything. Bill's fingerprints are all over the Keys, the Everglades, and Biscayne Bay. Area charts even show Curtis Point, one of his favorite fishing spots. His knowledge is vast, his expertise and professionalism are renowned. Yet Curtis' greatest legacy may be his dedication to Florida's resources and the significant roles he played in the creation of Biscayne National Park in 1968 and the founding of Bonefish and Tarpon Unlimited in 1999. And also, in Bill's own words, I take some pride in being one of the people who were here when this thing took off. I mean, he gave back all the way through. The speakers for him tonight will be Chico Fernandez and Pat Forbes. Would you please come up? You want the podium? You ready to go? You can go out here naked, or you can stand behind the podium.
I prefer, everybody prefers to keep my clothes on, I think. Actually, Steve, you mentioned that TV show. In 1968, that was really the first television show that showed what fishing in the flats down in the Florida Keys was all about. It had, Joe Brooks, Kurt Gowdy, and Bill Curtis was the guide. That made a big impression on me. I was living in New York at the time, and I think it affected people all over the country that didn't have a clue about what we do down here now. We actually have a copy of that video in the IGFA museum, and Gail got it to me a while ago, and I spent some time looking through it, but this time I really sort of looked at what the guide was doing. And they took a week to film this. And at one point in the show, Kurt Gowdy is casting a crab to a permit, and he's getting some snappy little instructions from his guide. These were so neat, I thought I'd write them down and read them to you. This is Bill Curtis giving Kurt Gowdy instructions. Let it sink, let it sink. No, you got to, wait a minute, nope, he's moving on it. Don't spook him. No, bring your crab in before you spook him. You spooked him. Drop the crab, get down low. You spooked him. He's spooked off now. Hey, you see him out there? You see him, Kurt? You see him? He's still out there, moving to the white spot. You see him? I can see him. Oh, that scared him. Reel it in. I think he's too spooked now. Reel it in. This is 2 weeks of filming, and this is the nicest comments they could put together about from Bill to Kurt Gowdy. Kurt didn't get a word in edgewise during this thing, and Joe Brooks was hiding in a corner pretending he wasn't there. But as we all know, it simply just proves one thing that we all know, is that even back in 1968, Bill Curtis was a crotchety old fart. And he's improved on that for the next 40 years, but he has mellowed recently. So at any rate, I was in the Navy in Key West in 71 and 72, and there were Curtis sightings. I'd get a call from the locals, and they'd say, oh, Bill Curtis is in town. Nobody ever called me to tell me Stu Apt was in town. But when Bill showed up in the yellow and blue boat, the radar went out and everybody was calling everybody, telling him. In 1973, I was in Miami and joined the Rod and Reel Club, and I was talking to somebody about badge advancements and catches, and one of the catches was a bonefish on a fly. And they said, well, that's the easiest one. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, this is the way you do it. You go out and you hire Curtis for half a day, picks you up at Key Biscayne, runs you about a mile down to Stiltsville, throws out some chum. You only got to cast 30 feet, bonefish come in the chum, flop the fly, catch fish, you're back in an hour. That was the way bone fishing was back in the 70s, especially if you're with Bill. Now, I actually began fishing with Bill back in probably 73 or 74. And I got on the boat one day, and he had a fish cleaning table over his engine. Now, we have a picture of that, if you could pop that up again. This is the original fish cleaning. That's my son on the thing. The original fish cleaning table in the back of the boat that Bill used to stand on. And it's not made like the ones they have today. With this thing, you took your life in your hands getting up there. It would wobble back and forth, and Bill would spend the whole day going like this. And it did, though, allow him to pole the boat smoother and faster and spot fish a long way off, which actually was good because then he could start yelling at you earlier. Actually, it was hard to get people to split a charter with Bill. Most of my friends were afraid of him. You'd say, let's go bone fishing. I got a guide. They say, great. They said, it's Bill Curtis. They go, no, he's going to yell at me. I'm not good enough. I don't. And they start backing out of the room and disappear. But, you know, that's Bill. Back in those days, his hands looked like driftwood. Now they look like dead driftwood. And he always had a cigarette in his mouth. He was coughing and spitting. My kids still talk about that, 40 years later. And, he was just a character to be on the boat with. We all sort of refer to Lefty Cray as the Yoda of fly fishing. Well, Bill is sort of the Darth Vader. And you'd walk up to the boat and he'd say something like, I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. You should not have come back. But the man could catch us some fish. He got me into tarpon fishing on fly, I guess the late 80s, early 90s or something. We were at the Rod and Reel Club, and we're talking about tarpon fishing on fly, and I really had been an offshore fly fisherman, hadn't really done tarpon. And Bill said, oh, it's great, you got to do it. And I said, yeah, but it's such a pain to get down to the Keys. He said, no, we can do it right out in Miami. And I said, really? I didn't even know there were tarpon in Miami back then. He said, no, let's go. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm open, let's go. So I said, fine. Bill says, be at my house at 4 o'clock. I said, 4 o'clock in the morning? Where are we going, Key West? And he said, no, just be there. So I show up at 4 in the morning, we load up the boat, drive down to Homestead Bayfront Park, launch, pitch dark, we're running across the bay at 40 miles an hour. You can't see the front of the boat. Bill leans down and says, there's a marker around here somewhere. Keep an eye out for it. And about 3 minutes later, this marker comes about 6 feet to the starboard, whizzes by us, and then a minute later, Bill says, yeah, there it is. So I was pretty much convinced by then that I was never going to make it to the ocean alive. But we get there, and now it's 5:15 in the morning. We pull around Old Rhodes Point, and there's another boat there. And it's like an hour before daylight, and I'm beginning to think all these people are completely crazy. So at any rate, Bill motors up to this guy who was a guide over in Ocean Reef. I didn't know. And he says, good morning, Mr. Curtis. Where would you like me to fish? So Bill says, just stay where you are. We'll move up here. So he moves about 100 yards above him. But that's the kind of respect he got from, the other guys on the ocean back then. So we caught a bunch of tarpon, and I was completely and utterly, hooked from then on. Bill and I have fished a lot together ever since. One day I got a phone call at my office, and he says, I got a legal project for you. I said, what's that? He says, well, you heard of Trout Unlimited. I want to do something called Bonefish and Tarpon Unlimited. So I said, sure. It sounded like a good idea. So we formed the corporation. with Bill as basically the founder of that, and we all know what it's done so far. But it was his idea to start the Bonefish and Tarpon Unlimited and the Bonefish Tarpon Trust. Very few people know that, but it was something that was way ahead of its time. In about 1965 or something, not 1965. When he turned around 65, he stopped smoking, figuring that was enough. He stopped coughing and stopped gagging. And I brought a friend down from Alaska who owned a lodge who wanted to fish with him. So I take him out with Bill, and we're standing there talking to tarpon, and I hear Bill say to him, I'm really getting old. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do this, but I really want to fish Alaska one more time before I die. Well, 10 minutes later, Bill had a free trip to Alaska. Now, he's pulled this scam for the next 20 years. And finally, all the lodge owners figured out that he was never going to die, and this is all just a scam. So, at any rate, Bill and I did go to Chile, Patagonia with Steve Selway in December of 2009. And it's trout fishing. It's in Patagonia, Chile. And we were on Lake Yelko. And I was in one boat. Bill was in another. Bill's in a Zodiac. And he hooks up a fish. And we've got some pictures from that. Can you pop them up? Yeah. So I'm in one boat. He's in the other. And Bill's fishing, fighting his fish. Next thing I know, his knees weaken. He puts his hand out to sort of steady himself. Well, it's a round boat, and he slips and goes right in the water. Now, this water is about 45 degrees. But keep your eye on the fishing rod in these pictures. The guy grabs him by the foot, which is not the best position to hold somebody, but at least they stopped him from sinking, drug him back in the boat. Look at the rod. He's still got the rod. Got him set up. Still got the rod. Still got the rod. He's still fishing. Now he's a little exhausted because he's damn near dead. But yep, there's the fish. He caught the fish. If the guy hadn't caught his foot when he went over, Bill would be walking around the bottom of that lake today. But God spared him just so he could come here and get this award tonight. And he certainly deserves it. Thank you, Bill. Chico's going to say a few things, but I want you to know that Chico and I love hanging out with Bill, because when we're with Bill, we're the young guys.
Well said. I came to this country in 1959 with the advent of communism in Cuba and so on. I was already a fly fisherman. I started fly fishing in Cuba. Miami was very small. I started looking for someone to fly fish too, so I can get out and find the snook and the tarpon and the bonefish and so on. And I ended up, a week after I landed here, I ended up in a place called the Tackle Box, which was a fly fishing store, a tackle store that sold fly fishing equipment. And who was there but Bill Curtis? A week after I've been here, this is the guy I meet. Now, I had arrived from Cuba through the ferry that used to run from Havana to Key West. I came in on a racing Mercedes-Benz with the excuse that I was going to race in Sebring. I was going to stay. I wasn't racing anything. Anyway, I kept that car for 3 or 4 years. Eventually, I sold it to finance University of Miami and so on. But I had the car a week after I'd been here when I met Bill. We headed off right away. We're talking fishing. Bill had fished Cuba. He had fished Zapata Swamp and Treasure Lake and places I fished, so we were there. We keep talking. Pretty soon we're in the parking lot casting. We talked about bonefish and that, and I tell Bill that my favorite fish was, and still is, a snook. I love snook. Bill said, I know how to find snook. Oh, you're the man. You're my friend. He said, I can find snook now. Now, today, yes. I got a car here. Within 15 minutes, we had bamboo rods those days, Orvis Batten killed bamboo rods that would the equivalent to an 8 or a 9 weight. Within a few minutes later, we're headed down Tamiami Trail, doing 100, 100 and a quarter, as traffic permitted. Before we had left, he said, I have to make an important phone call. You stay outside. I don't know if he's calling the mafia or whatever. He was calling someone called Rocky Weinstein. In those days, I couldn't have pronounced that name. We headed down the Tamiami Trail. What he did is he called Rocky, and Rocky said the fish are in such and such bridge where the snook would be feeding. The trail had, the bridges are numbered in the trail. That day it was on Bridge 50. I remember that distinctly. Still has a big slough if you ever go by there. We get there. We caught a lot of fish. We caught a lot of snook. Had a great time. We got together. We just bonded. Through the years, he took me out fishing, bone fishing. We went to the Everglades in his boat. We went permit fishing. We went very fast. If we went with Bill, it was flat out. It always was. 30 years later, my son is now early teenager. Bill was nice enough to take him out. He caught his first bonefish with Bill. He caught his first 10-pound bonefish with Bill. I think most of the world have caught his first 10-pound bonefish with Bill. Always delighted when Bill would call and say, I want to take Steve fishing. You can come along too, you know, one of those things. You know, as a father, I'm delighted. This day he calls, want to take Steve fishing. Great, you can come along, great. We're going to do a different fishing. Sure, whatever you say. We get up there. In those days, I knew my tides in the bay pretty well. We're going on a very low outgoing tide. There's not going to be any water in the flat, but how do you tell the man that the flat is not going to be ready, it's not going to be right? Well, you don't. You don't. We get there, and I said, Bill, the tide's getting pretty low. Yeah, I know. It's like 7, 8 inches of water. In those days, boats didn't float in 7, 8 inches of water. And it was getting lower. Yeah, I know. All right. Sure enough, we finally get there. He buries the nose in the flat. Maybe there's 5 inches of water, maybe 4 inches. There are parts of the flat that are starting to show out of the water. There's nothing in the flat, okay? I know that. There's nothing in the flat. He had brought some little scoop nets about this size, a little handle, types you catch your bait out of the live well. Have brought all kinds of other little trinkets, brought his camera. That was it. They got out. He had told me he was very good with kids. They got out. He suggested, in the way only Bill can suggest, that I'm to stay in the boat. It's just Stephen and I. So they went out. There was no water. What Bill did, he was good with kids. They saw little mangrove snapper, little schoolmaster snapper, small shrimp, baby blue crabs, all kinds of stuff that Stephen scooped, and he had them on a bucket. Bill told him about how big the mangrove snapper would get and how big these fish would get, and the gobies would only get this big, and this little shrimp eventually be real big, and it's what you eat in the restaurant, and blah, blah, blah. They had a wonderful time. By the time they got back, the tide was just about ready for bonefish, I thought, but it wasn't. That's all Bill wanted to share with Stephen, and we went home. To this day, my son is now 34, and he's practicing law, and, you know, he's a grown-up man. We still talk about that day that Bill took him out. I mean, he went out with him many times. We caught many fish, but that day was special. He was good with kids. We still think about that day, Bill. God bless you. Thank you.
You can see by what these two gentlemen said about him, the stories, the respect, and the people he's taught. Awesome. At this time, Bill Curtis, come up and receive your award. Welcome into the Captain and Crew Legendary Tommy Gifford Award. yelling at us, Bill.
Okay. I'm not guiding right now.
Oh, you've done enough guiding already.
And yelling.
Just advising.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Bill, would you like to respond to all your friends? I can set you up with a mic.
I feel very honored to receive this award tonight, and it's due to all the friends and people that have fished with me over the years, because I am receiving this award. I'm sure there's other captains that are well qualified to also get this award, and I hope to see them in the future, because my doctor says I'm not going to die, so.
One more trip to Alaska, huh?
I think I've made my last trip to Alaska. That trip is just a little too demanding for me at my age now.
Well, Bill, you certainly deserve this award, and congratulations once again.
All right. Thank you, Skip.
It's all about the respect of your peers, and boy, he's got it. I know a couple of captains probably put a couple of those Alaska ideas in their head, I can tell you that. A couple of guys out there. That story won't go a long ways. Our next recipient tonight is another gentleman, well respected in the industry, Captain Joe Mott. Captain Joe Mott was a second-generation charter boat skipper who fished out of Pompano Beach, Hillsborough Inlet. At a very young age, and at a time when captains alone did it all on their boats, Joe convinced Art Robinson to use him as a mate on Vera. By the age of 19, Joe was running his own boat, the Lucky Lady, and already laying the groundwork for his well-deserved reputation as one of the best all-around captains to ever hail out of Hillsborough. Though a relative newcomer, when the lucrative South Florida cobia fishing was discovered, Mott was always successful catching the species, not only because of his keen sight fishing skills, but also because he was savvy enough to know that having his father-in-law Crawford, who was a Hillsborough dockmaster, flying the beach, spotting for him, was a plus. He had a plane. Joe played a major role in the growth of sword fishing in South Florida. He studied everything, from baits and the rigs to the phases of the moons, from water temperatures and to the depths to light sources. And his extensive research served as a valuable guide to all those who followed him. On the backlash, he was one of the pioneers of sail fishing in Cozumel in the 60s. And he also traveled with owner Dick Schubott to Cat Cay, Bimini, and even out to Cairns, Australia. Wherever he went and whatever the species, Joe Mott was likely to outfish everyone, and he did. I was there. I was one of the guys on the bottom looking up at him. He was absolutely awesome. What, you going to complain, Alan Merritt? At this time, I want to bring Mike Black up on his behalf to tell his story, and I think our other storyteller is Bart Garnezy. You want to go first?
Okay.
You want to go first?
We'll let Marky anchor here. Good evening. I first wandered onto the charter boat scene back in the mid-'70s, and unlike Marky here, who came off a drift boat, where he talked about last year that can anything come off a drift boat and go to a sport fishing boat? Well, I came from a paint and body shop. I moved down from Chicago, always loved to fish, but knew nothing about ocean fishing. So I come down to Hillsborough charter docks and get a job on a charter boat, and not with Joe Mott. What I learned on this charter boat I was in, that when you were out there and the Riptide 4 was out there, you wanted to make sure you got your charter party back to the docks and off and unloaded and in their cars and home before the Riptide 4 came wheeling in there and unloaded all those fish. I mean, what do you tell a party that pays all that kind of money when the captain's telling them that, well, it's really a tough day of fishing out there, and then the Riptide 4 comes in and makes you look like a complete idiot? So I had to endure that for a couple of years, and I remember working late one night at the dock, and I went to leave, and Joe came over to approach me and said, hey, would you like to go fishing with us to Cozumel on the backlash? I thought, wow, what a great opportunity this is going to be. Here's a guy, Joe, soft-spoken, didn't know him very well, quiet demeanor, calm. And I thought, wow, this is going to be a great learning experience, work with a guy that's not screaming at you, you know, ripping your head off. But little did I know, now see, Joe had a passion for duck hunting, so he loved to train bird dogs. But unbeknownst to me, while he was training bird dogs, he also trained this pit bull that we all affectionately came to know as Danny Bear. And I had to fish alongside the cockpit with Danny Bear. So as good and as quiet as Joe was, and he never got mad, it was made up and it was offset by Danny. Always on your case. If Danny didn't have 6 or 8 cups of coffee in the morning, you didn't even talk to him. But I learned so much working with Joe. I learned that when all other fishermen are telling you, oh, it's not a good time to go, it's bad, it's not really that good, it's not worth it, Joe always made it look different than that. He always had a way and a method for every single thing he did. We went down to Cozumel that first year that Skip had talked about, and that particular year we won the World Release title with Dick Schubot. And we're out there catching sailfish one day, and we get a phone call. He gets a call on the VHF radio from another captain down there that, Joe, there's this big mako, and he's up here eating a swordfish on top, and we've been baiting him here for 45 minutes. We've thrown mackerel at him, mullet at him, everything we can think of, and we can't get him to bite. And Joe yelled down to the cockpit, he said, when these clowns get through fooling around with that mako, we'll go over there and catch them. So they finally gave off, and they pulled off, and they said, have at it, Captain. So we went over there. As soon as we got there, Joe told both of us, just open up the transom door, get a hook, get that swordfish in the cockpit. As soon as you get him in, cut a hunk of meat off, put it on a hook, and throw it out. I mean, that hook just barely hit the water, and we had to make him on and put him on the boat. Everything that Joe did. We had heard that no one had ever brought a whole bluefin tuna into Cozumel. They'd bring in a head or a carcass eaten by the sharks. Everybody that would hook them, you know, they'd practically strip them, take them down to the bottom, and they'd never bring a whole fish in there. Well, the first time we came across and saw the bluefins busting in Cozumel, we had a rocket launcher back then. We didn't have the fighting chair, but we rigged that up we had no back for the chair. We just put a cooler in front and turn around, and about 20 minutes later, we had that bluefin in the boat. Now, Joe had a lot of great accomplishments wherever he went. I learned that this guy could go just about anywhere and catch fish, anywhere he went in any particular environment he was in. I remember when we went to Cat Key the first time, we went over there bluefin tuna fishing. I had never bluefin fished before. I had never wired a bluefin. And all the way over, Joe's telling me, now you got to pay attention to what you're doing here, Mike, because these fish pull pretty hard. He'd tell me about a guy that had been pulled overboard one time, you know, wiring a bluefin. So I've got all this in the back of my head. So we go up in the tower, and we're heading south looking for the schools of bluefin running. Finally saw a bunch, and I ran down there, threw the bait over. Well, we were way up in the flats. So this fish, we hooked him, and then this fish is trying to get up over the edge and go over the drop-off, right? So hopefully that he would go down and wear himself out after a while, and then me, being the wire man, I could wire up a fish that was tired. I don't know, Joe corralled this fish in on the flats and kept him up here, and I think the leader was singing along the boat about 12 knots about 8 minutes after we hooked him. And we didn't fish 15 foot of wire either. I mean, we were right to the 30-foot max on the IGFA rules, and that was the first bluefin I wired. I remember getting done because I was hoping that Danny would just cut the thing after I pulled it a little bit and let it go, but Carol Ann wanted to make sure that she went down the cockpit and took a picture of this bluefin. And it was like that with every bluefin. You had to wire every single one. Joe was just an incredible fisherman. We came back from from Cat Key that particular time. Swordfishing started to emerge, and we were hearing about guys going out rod and reeling for swordfish. First time we went out, we had 11 bites that night in about 3 hours and put 4 fish in the boat. Well, Joe said, well, what we ought to do is rig up a little mini long line here and put a little bit out and see how we do. So we got a bunch of people that were foolish enough to come along that night and help us out, you know. and we put out 1.5 miles of line. We had a high flyer, put that out with the blinking strobe light on it, put a few hooks out, and 1.5 miles later we had another one. Just got all that out, and Joe said, well, you might as well, guys, lay down and go in a bunk and take a rest, and we'll get up later on and we'll pull the line before the morning. Well, we didn't lay down about a half an hour. Joe comes down there and says, you guys need to get up, we got to pull the line. And we're all groggy and go, Joe, what are we pulling the line for? He goes, well, we got both high flyers are touching each other right now, so I think we might as well pick it and put it in the boat. And the line was full of fish. Everywhere that I'd ever been with Joe, there was always an experience. He taught me that no matter how tough things are, you keep persevering. Joe had a reason, and Skip alluded to that. Everything he did, moon phase, current. And unlike Skip, Joe did believe in colors on certain things. But everything that we did, Joe had a reason for it, and he taught me a lot. He taught me that if you understand why you're good at what you do, you can duplicate that. I've seen a lot of people in the fishing industry, and Joe would tell me all the time, anybody can catch fish out there when they're out there eating each other. But you need to learn to catch them when it's tough, when the rest of the guys aren't catching them. And that's what he taught a lot of people how to do. The older I got in life, I learned that it's really not difficult or all that hard to be successful at something that you're gifted in or you have a passion for. What's really difficult is to be able to teach others to become that way. And in that regard, Joe was a great teacher. He left an incredible legacy. In fact, most of us that had worked on the back deck for Joe ended up going sword fishing, but he was smart enough that he knew the investment that he put into his protégés, that he would get a fish market along with Alan and Roy Merritt, and he would buy our catch. So he was also a good businessman. But I want to say tonight that I know that on behalf of Carol Ann and the family, what an honor it is for Joe to be inducted into the IGFA Legends, Captains, and Crew tonight. But I also think it's equally an honor for IGFA to be associated with the resume of Captain Joe Mott. Thank you.
This is kind of difficult for me, and I'll be honest with you. Joe was a kind of a quiet guy and kind of a private guy. And growing up on the dock at Hillsborough, he was on the other side of the dock when I was a young kid. And then I went off, and the government sent me on an all-expenses-paid vacation to Southeast Asia. And as soon as I got home from that fun trip, I came back to work on the drift boat. And growing up on the drift boats, and by the way, Skip Smith, Obie O'Brien, I can't even begin to tell there's a whole lot of drift boat guys, and we're real proud of that, by the way. And I went back to work for my dad on the drift boat, and right next to him was tied up the Riptide 4, and next to him was John Mumford on the Bolo. And I was telling my dad one day, I said, I think that I don't want to be on a drift boat all my life. I want to, maybe work on a charter boat. And the one thing you do learn on the drift boat, I'm going to digress a minute, you learn the food chain. And when you're working on a drift boat, you realize you're at the bottom of the food chain, particularly when you're working for my own man, I got to tell you that. So I got looking at this charter boat deal, and he said, well, look, and I think the idea of me going on a charter boat was, my dad liked that. And he said, if you're going to do this, he said, there's 2 boats right here, Joe Mott, John Mumford. He said, you watch them, and you'll learn something. Well, the only way you're going to learn anything with Joe Mott is watching, because he wouldn't tell you anything. I mean, absolutely nothing. He pulled his fingernails out. You got nothing from him. But I had a lucky break, because his mate was one of my very dearest friends, Captain Danny Bear. Couldn't get much out of him either, to be honest with you, but occasionally he'd slip and let us know something. There's several guys in here that grew up here in South Florida, and we all just respected Joe to the nth degree. I mean, he was the guy. And as years went by, I was working with Mr. Stuart Campbell, and all in the crew were all Hillsborough guys, and we'd tell him stories about Joe. He never met Joe. And we'd say, well, here's why we do this. This is in the Joe Mott Fishing Guide, page 101, and we'd do some doggone thing, and no matter where we were, we'd see a boat off on the horizon, we'd say, well, shoot, that's Joe Mott. It didn't make any difference where we were. It could be in Africa or Brazil. It was Joe Mott, He was our hero growing up. And he truly was our hero. And we did all that out of respect. And I have no idea what I'm going to say next. But I'll come to it. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to get it. Now, Joe was indeed our hero. And one day, I'll give you an idea how much everyone watched him and tried to emulate what he did. Boy, that's a good word. We had an old boy that was on the other side of the dock, and I'm not going to mention his name. It was Lou Klopstein. He was a wonderful guy. Everybody loved Lou. And he was one of the most popular guys, and he wasn't the greatest fisherman, but he was a real nice person. One day, Joe's coming in the inlet at Hillsborough, and the old ground seas are smoking in there pretty good. And you got to remember, back then, if you had a 40-foot boat, you had a big boat, and they weren't 70 feet like they are today, and they weren't real fast either. So Joe's coming in the inlet, and a good ground sea smoking, and Lou's right behind him. He's going to watch Joe do this, and he's going to see how to do it. So Joe starts in, and he just didn't have enough speed, and a big old sea caught him, spun him right around, he broached. He was about 3/4 of the way in. He thought, well, shoot, I'm in here now. So he just slammed it in reverse and backed in the inlet. It worked good. So as he's backing in the inlet, he gets around the jetty, and he looks out, and Captain Lou had spun his boat around and backed in the inlet. and Joe looked at him, he said, he got on the radio, and was back in the AM radios, and he said, what you doing, Lou? He said, it worked for you, Joe, and it worked for me, you know? And it did. And that's what we tried to do. It worked for Joe. We couldn't do it as well as Joe. There wasn't any way. He was the best there was. And I'm really proud to have this chance to help with him. He was a good man. Thank you.
Thanks, Barky. Thanks, Mike Black. The stories will go on for many years. There's a lot about Joe out there. Talked about a lot, all in good. At this time, I would like to ask Carol Ann Mott and Devin Mott to come up and receive the award for Captain Joe Mott. Carol, you have a few words there?
Maybe. I'm probably going to have to read this because I'm not like these other guys with that good gift of gab, which is so great. So anyway, I'm going to try. And I want to say what a great tribute to Joe to be honored here tonight, along with Bill and Barky and Chip and Lori. And we all know that Joe's first love was fishing and being out on that ocean, looking for and trying to outsmart those fish and making his customers happy all the time. He and Danny Bear and many other mates that are here tonight worked really hard to make that happen, to make those customers really happy, and got those mounts as well. And I feel over the years that he was very successful. And if he wasn't fishing on the ocean, he was at a lake someplace looking for a big bass or a crappie, and even in Canada taking a break from duck hunting to catch a walleye or smallmouth bass or a muskie. It didn't matter, he was fishing. We're proud of his accomplishments and feel he is deserving of this award. But for his peers to think so, like Mark said, for his peers to think the same and nominate him, it just doesn't get any better than that. So without further ado, on Joe's behalf, I, along with his daughter Susie, son Buster, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight because he's battling cancer, and our grandson, Devin, we thank you for this honor.
You're welcome. Sounds like Joe was mad at every species out there. Wherever he went, he was out chasing some fish. The next captain to receive the award is a long ways away from here. He's from Cairns, Australia, Captain Laurie Woodbridge. Name that probably many of us heard over the years and looked at and respected over the years. Laurie was a skilled plumber by trade. Laurie Woodbridge learned his craft deckhanding on the Sea Baby 2 with George Bransford, the father of Cairns' giant black marlin fishing, at the helm. In 1973, Woodbridge acquired Sea Baby 2 for himself and went on to become a legend skipper in her. Multiple tournament wins followed. In 1984, he won all 7 tournaments he entered, as did numerous black marlin grandeurs, including Moreton Bay's 1,347-pound catch off Lizard Island, still an 80-pound world record today. And in a single day, Wood and friend Jack Erskine caught 8 black marlin on 4-pound line and set 4 consecutive world records. A proponent of natural baits who only occasionally fish with lures, Woods is credited with being the first captain to catch a grander on an artificial lure in the early 1990s. Quiet and unassuming, he was known for his natural ability to understand fish in any situation. Admired for his composure on the flying bridge and nicknamed Captain Midnight because he fished to all hours of the night. He was also named Marlin International Captain of the Year in 1983 and into the Cairns Professional Game Fishing Hall of Fame in 2008. Laurie Woodbridge devoted 30 years to the development and growth of the sport fishing off the Great Barrier Reef and is considered one of the most successful captains in Australia's history. At this time, I'd like to ask Peter Wright to come up. Since you got the fish next to him for 30-something years, Peter, come on up, please. Peter Wright.
Thanks, Skip. I appreciate very much being able to talk for a few moments about my friend Laurie Woodbridge. I actually took Laurie Woodbridge fishing the first time he ever went out for marlin. I'd met him in Cairns the first year I was there, which was 1968, and he and Dennis Hayes had invited me to go fishing for what you and I would know as mangrove snapper, but was called mangrove jacks down in Australia. And we went up the creek in a little tin John boat thing and started fishing, and I kind of wanted these guys to know that I knew a little something, and they were using live shrimp, and they had some mullet. Well, I cut the head off of a mullet and hooked it through the lips and flipped it out there. They looked at me like I was nuts. And they caught a lot more fish than I did, but I caught the big one. So before I ever got to go fishing in the ocean with them, they figured that maybe this yank knew a little bit of something. They told you some of the things about Woodbridge, and he was a joker. He loved pulling pranks on people, and I'd like to tell you something that will give you a hint of what Laurie was like. There's a guy down in Australia named, that loses me for a second. What's the writer's name? CP? Say again?
Peter Goby?
No. Oh, man, I know this guy. He's a cane farmer from Innisfail. Anyway, I'm sorry, folks. I'm losing it. I got too many things to think about tonight. But
You get a free cocktail if you guess it.
Johnny Mundora. Johnny Mundora is a very good friend of mine, and I can't think of his name in an instance like this. That shows you how I do under pressure. But Mundora was a writer, and he wrote magazine articles. He was a cane farmer for a profession, and he and Woodbridge had a great relationship. Well, there's a lake called Lake Tinaroo that holds big barramundi. There's some of the pictures of Wood showed him catching big barramundi, very similar to our snook. Well, Wood loved to pull a prank. So he was in the supermarket one day, and he saw a little 3-pack of rainbow trout. So he bought it, and he took it home, and he took one of them and stuck it in his bait freezer. And a long period of time later, probably several weeks or months, I've heard this story from both of the men, he asked Mundora to get some bait out of the freezer. Well, Mundora looks in the freezer, and here's a rainbow trout. You know, unheard of, within maybe 2,000 miles of Cairns. And he picks it up, and he goes in, you know, and he looks at it, he goes in, he says, Wood, he says, what's that thing in the freezer? He says, I don't know, some kind of a mud gudgeon or something. I caught it up in Lake Tinaroo. And Mundora went absolutely ballistic. Oh my God, they've stocked rainbow trout. Somebody threw a rainbow trout in Lake Tinaroo. They've survived, you know. And he says, well, I don't know. I didn't know what it was, you know. I thought it was, you know, related to a little mud dauber or something. Well, Mundora starts writing a story. It's going out in all the fishing magazines in Australia. You know, it's the unbelievable thing. There's rainbow trout living in Lake Tinaroo. And Woodbridge would never have told him. But his wife, you know, couldn't let Johnny Mundora make this mistake that would have probably ruined his career as a journalist. And he called up Mundora's wife and said, Jenny, don't let Johnny do it. He says, what do you mean? Wood bought the rainbow trout in the supermarket. And neither one of them has forgotten it to this day. That just should give you an idea of what kind of guy Wood was on one level. I got a little short list here of some of his accomplishments. Wood had a severe stroke about 10 years ago, I think. I'm not sure exactly. And he's quite incapacitated. Talking to him is quite difficult. He's gotten most of his functions back, but communication is still difficult. So I got his daughter and John Mundora and his wife to all send me their version of Wood's acceptance speech, which I have edited as best I can. But among his accomplishments, in 1977, a world record for Wilma Childs, a 1,082-pound black marlin, women's world record on 80-pound line. Steve Zuckerman, 2 fish in 1 day, also on 80-pound line, 1,233 and 1,035 pounds on 80. 1979, a world record for Morton D., alias Buster May, 1,347 pounds on 80-pound line. That world record still stands. He caught 10 blacks in 1 day, one over 1,000 pounds. In 1983, he was the Marlin International Captain of the Year. In 2007, he was inducted into the North Queensland Game Fishing Hall of Fame. 2008, he was inducted into the Cairns Professional Game Fishing Hall of Fame. And in 2012, he's receiving the IGFA Tommy Gifford Award. These are Woodbridge's words. I am extremely honored and humbled by this award. I wish I could be there to accept it. After decades on the bridge, I look back on my career with great joy and appreciation. The giant marlin I found for my clients, the light tackle tournaments I was lucky, wasn't all luck, folks, to win, and just being out on the ocean will always hold fond memories. I was involved in the marlin industry for 30 years. Along the way, so many brilliant, past and present, anglers, fishermen, deckies, captains, and employers have been instrumental in my successful career. I am very thankful to those people, but feel I am not able to name them, for the thought of inadvertently missing someone is too distressing to me. They know who they are, and most remain good friends. I raise my glass to you all. Cheers, and thank you, Laurie Woodbridge.
Peter, you're going to accept the Peter, you're going to accept the award on behalf of Captain Laurie. I got to fish out there, and Laurie was one of the most respected captains on the reef. When he talked, everybody listened. Go ahead.
So far, I have been lucky enough to know every single one of the inductees. Most of you don't know Laurie. Some of you do. He is one of the best, but there are so many. I fished with Bill Curtis. I fished with just about everybody except Tommy Gifford that has been named here, but I met Tommy, and he was very gruff and mean to me as a little kid in Bimini. But this is indeed an extremely rarefied group of men. I have an analogy that I use. The college baseball players are better than most people at playing baseball. But a guy that's going into professional ball doesn't go to college. He goes directly into the minor leagues. The minor leagues start with AAA ball. They're even better than the college players. AA is a notch up, A is a notch higher, but they're not as good as the big league baseball players. There's one additional level, all-stars. I feel like I am fortunate enough to know most of the all-star big game fishing captains. I don't begin to know the guides and crewmen that are equally important, but the fact that we are here today to honor the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and the professional guides and captains brings me a great deal of satisfaction. I'm very glad to be part of it, and thank you all for coming.
Well put, Peter. Thank you. That sums it up. Awesome group of fishermen here. The next recipient, Captain Chip Shafer. Captain Chip Shafer grew up in North Carolina, fishing both freshwater and saltwater. He left his studies at the Duke University in 1967 to join the Marines, and after being wounded in Vietnam, was sent to Camp Lejeune to recuperate. When possible, he freelanced on local charter docks, and in 1973, started working as a mate and hatteras for veteran captains who became his mentors. The following year, Shafer began operating the Temptress between Oregon Inlet, North Carolina, Stewart, Florida, and Chubb Cay, where he became the first captain to land a double Grand Slam. Of course, everybody knows it's 2 whites, 2 blues, and 2 sails. A hell of an accomplishment even today. He also began winning tournaments. The Stewart Light Tackle, the Stewart Club Light Tackle, Pirates Cove, Virginia Beach Billfish, the White Marlin Open, and the Masters Invitational. In 1991, when Chip and Terry acquired their twin-engine Temptress, Mexico and Venezuela were added to the schedule. A decade later, Chip was running angler Nick Smith's Old Reliable, fly fishing the Pacific, locations such as Costa Rica, Panama, and Guatemala, and catching a record-setting 500 billfish on fly in 1 year, 2004. Known for his easygoing nature, inquisitive mind, and a simple yet affectionate approach, Chip is an expert in maximizing hookups and is credited with the technique of dropping back the tailing fish. A natural teacher, Chip Shafer has turned novices into expert anglers and mates into skillful captains, and is considered one of the greats to come out of Oregon Inlet. I'll add a few more places to that, Chip. Everywhere you left, your crews that you've left, the guys you've taught have come on to be top fishermen. Unbelievable. At this time, I'd like to have Captain John Bayless and Brad Watkins come up.
Well, I want to say how much an honor it is for me to be up here, and Chip had a lot to do with being my mentor and teaching me what I needed to know about a life as a fisherman and then eventually as a boat builder and what that's meant to me. But I wanted to add a little bit to the history of what it was like to be one of Chip's mates and also to meet him firsthand. I think I met Chip firsthand in 1974, and there I was with my family. We were tourists. I think I was 16, 17. He's on the deck of the Early Bird, Captain Emery Dillon, who I wound up later working for. And Chip was there, and he was talking about the king mackerel fishing. You all come back in the fall and have a great time, and, you know, we'll see you then. So we leave, and we Come back the next year, no more Chip. Chip was such a quick study that he had already graduated to the bridge. I think Monty Howe had a couple boats, and all of a sudden Chip was running the Temptress. So there we were, tourists again that year, and I'm fresh out of high school, getting ready to go to the Mercury Marine Academy, and there's Chip backing in on the Temptress, probably a few flags on the boat, and he's smoking that single-engine Temptress back in the slip, and we're just like so impressed. There he was, mate last year. Now he's a captain this year. He's smoking everybody, and it was a big impression on me. So lo and behold, I get the opportunity to go work for Captain Emery. He gives me a phone call, and vacancy came up because the mate didn't work out quite right on the early bird, and here I go. So Emery's told me a couple stories about Chip. One of them was about Chip's a very intelligent guy. I think I would say that he could do just about anything. You know probably that he was in pre-med at Duke when he left and went to officer training and joined the Marines. So he was the kind of guy that could do just about anything, thus the nickname Dr. Shafer. So anyway, here we go. I wind up on the early bird, and Emery tells me about Chip. Another talent that he has is a salesman. So we'd have a charter on the boat, and Emery would tell me, look now, Chip really likes bill fishing, and here's how he would handle his fish, his people, when we wanted to go bill fishing, try and get the meat fish thing out of the way. So we're catching a few dolphin, and then he said Chip would go ahead and tell him, you don't want to catch any more of these dolphin, do you? You've had plenty of these dolphin, haven't you? It's time for us to go marlin fishing, isn't it? So that's how it started. So lo and behold, a couple years of that, I wound up having the good fortune of working for Chip down in Florida. And Emery was a fantastic fisherman as far as teaching you the mechanics of what's right and what's wrong. But Chip was really the doctor as far as polishing you to be a good bill fisherman, not only as a mate, but as an angler. And that's what I think was really important to me. So one day, I just idolized Chip, and here I have my big chance to work for the man in the business at that time. We're down in Florida, and we've got a family group on the boat, and this was just a bad day for me. We had I think six to eight opportunities at sales, and we're fishing wire leaders and small hooks and doing our best, but we had not come tight on any of them, and we had had a bad morning. So here we are, family group. Mom finally gets this 18, 20-pound cow dolphin. This is going to salvage our morning right here. We've had a terrible start. Here comes the dolphin. So I get ready to gaff the dolphin, and she jumps about the time that I'm getting ready to gaff the dolphin. The thing gets tangled up in my leader, and I'm swatting at it. And finally break the leader. Off she swims. Family's all disappointed. Chip calmly looks down, and he says, well, we didn't get her, but at least we damn sure killed her. So as I'm trying to peek up over the cover boards, I feel about this big, we wound up having a successful day. And that was about as bad as it ever got with Chip. One thing that you could always count on, what was amazing after fishing with different guys is that, and I think the anglers would comment about this too, is that he'd see a fish coming, and it was not like, here he comes, rigger, or no identification. It would be left flat line, sailfish, or right flat line, white marlin. And he would be very specific. There's no extra instruction in there, and that was all you had to do. So I would say from the instructional standpoint, he was outstanding. And, and I think that plays through to the mates that he was able to foster from there. So I think one of the best things that we can do as fishermen or as people is impart knowledge to others that I think help others and make them better at what they do. And I think that of all the accomplishments that Chip has through his fishing career, when you look back at the lineage of guys that worked under him and where they've gone from there, I think when I mention these names, you'll see that there'll probably be a few inductees out of this list that make it here, and it's really credit to Chip. So I wanted to mention some of the family of guys that he was able to, we all kind of call it the School of Shafer, but started with Bill Hogan, Chris Hickman, I came along in there somewhere, Bull Tolson, North Carolina, Dave Jansen, Mike Everly, Pete Sheehan, Arch Brasher, don't need to say much about that, Mike Brady, Keith Biggs, Jimmy Grant, and Graysel. And I can say that no matter what, whether we would have been Marines under his command in Vietnam, or whether we were fishing a tournament, or we were on a particularly rough day on bad conditions, no matter what, I would say that Chip calmly and quietly would always command the respect of anybody that was around him. And it was just, he's been one of the biggest influences in my life, and it's a great honor for me to be here to say this. I think it's an honor for the IGFA, and it's certainly an honor for Chip, so thank you.
Being on the other side of the fence, I spent most of my time in the cockpit and hanging on the side of the Temptress and trying to talk about things to Chip that when we weren't catching fish, because what Chip taught me more than anything else, is that there was so much more to being on the water than catching fish. We built a bond that hopefully will last forever. But a lot of things have been hit on by Skip as well as John, but I first met Chip in the late 70s. I went to Hatters, North Carolina. I wanted to charter a boat and catch a blue marlin. Everybody said, oh, you got to fish the Temptress and Chip Shafer. So we did two remarkable things on that trip. We, number one, got out 5 consecutive days in a row. And number two, we never saw a billfish for 5 consecutive days in a row. And, you know, it was really remarkable because on the way home, I got a telephone call from a buddy that was down there. He says, you won't believe this, but the Temptress just caught a big fish today, and I'm going over the Bay Bridge Tunnel at the time. And, you know, I'm like, oh, man, I can't believe this. I came down to do this. But anyway, it built a bond that has lasted many years. Chip was the master of the one-liners, and he would get me in the cockpit, and I always thought I could talk to most people, but he'd floor me at times. One of the things that he said so often, on a slow day, you'd be pacing and kind of looking up at the bridge and all this stuff, and Chip would say, you know something, we do the same thing winning tournaments as we do losing them. And, you know, you put that in perspective and thought, wow, nothing's really changed. He's right. When I met Chip, he kept the boat in Oregon Inlet, and Terry and the family lived up in Kitty Hawk, and Chip would basically stay in Oregon Inlet, and I could be wrong on this, 2 or 3 nights, and then he would drive to Kitty Hawk, which in those days probably took an hour and a half. He'd spend the night up there, he'd drive back, had a pickup truck that it's not going to go into any Hall of Fame, I can tell you. But anyway, that's how he did it. He always had on his khakis. He had his uniform, so to speak. In 1971, I caught my first sailfish, or first billfish, out of the Stewart Inlet. And I was with my dad, and don't mean to get sentimental in any way, my dad's ashes are in the Stewart Inlet, but it was very important to me. At the time, I was trying to learn things, had a little topaz, and I just wanted to win the Stewart Light Tackle Tournament. And a guy named Monty Howe, who owned the Sheldon Midget Temptress prior to Chip and sold it to Chip, he booked that boat for, God, 10 years it seemed like. And they'd win, and they'd win, and they'd win, and I just kept thinking, one day that boat will be available, and I'll be able to charter that for Stewart. And lo and behold, it did finally come available, and in the second year, Charles Nichols and myself were very fortunate that we could win Stewart. And it was pretty pretty great deal. For whatever it's worth, Chip is still the winningest captain in the Stuart Light Tackle, in the history of Stuart Light Tackle. There are a lot of things that have been hit on that I'm going to do the same thing, and I apologize if I'm repetitious. Chip did attend Duke University. He left Duke and joined the United States Marine Corps. Went to Vietnam, was wounded. A bad situation in that respect, but a great situation for the fishing community. Because once he was discharged from Camp Lejeune, Chip got in his vehicle and headed to the Outer Banks, and the rest of it is a gift to us in the fishing community. He started out fishing in Chub Key in Florida, and finally, after about 15 years of doing that, he decided, hey, I want to take my boat and I'm going to Mexico. Chip will never tell you this, but it's something that I know firsthand. I was involved in the meetings. The International Masters Angling Tournament had moved to Mexico in 91 or 2. It was a big deal when it moved from Palm Beaches. And there was Chip sitting there with his new Bobby Sullivan boat, and he was fishing the tournament. In the first 7 years of the Masters Angling Tournament, if you did not draw the Temptress, you did not win the tournament. I mean, that's pretty incredible, because there were some very good boats there. I know Obi, a lot of guys in this room were right there. But if you didn't draw Chip, you weren't going to win. That could be for 2 reasons. One was he caught fish, but the other thing was, we're going to go back to the doctor. Chip was a master of coaching. And I always said that a blind man could catch fish if they just listen. And I don't think there's a mate in this room that worked for Chip Shafer that hadn't heard it over and over. Let him go, let him go, let him go. You may want to try him now, and good luck. And that's the way it was. It didn't take a mental genius. So finally the Rules Committee decided, whoa, we can't have coaching because this is the Masters. So they decided they were going to create or adopt the Shafer rule, which was basically no coaching from the bridge or the cockpit. Like any other good crew chief, Chip decided, well, we're not going to coach, we'll use secret words. So the next year, the word was Taylor. And when they said Taylor, you better dump it because it was going to happen. But yeah, it's a true story. I think it's a great honor. But when a tournament puts in a rule because of a captain that is so effective of what they do, I think that's a great honor. And I really do, Chip. Chip took the Temptress to Venezuela in '99. A very good close friend of mine happened to be there during this particular charter, and they caught 4 slams in 1 day. They caught 12 slams in 5 days. And none of these guys were your best of the best as far as anglers, but they were there at the right time, and Chip, Jimmy Grant, and the Temptress provided them with something they'll remember forever. That particular year, he also won the Grand Slam tournament. I'm going to tell you a couple quick stories on Chip that are kind of funny, and it's back to the one-liners. We were fishing a Pirates Cove tournament many years ago, and a large blue marlin inhaled a dink bait. Chip saying, wind it away, and I'm going, no, it's too late. And he had it. After about 5 hours of fighting the fish, it was getting toward dark, and the leader broke, and I was broke literally, physically, mentally, etc. And Chip's exact words were to his mate, mark Brad down for 1 swivel. And you turned around, and you started laughing, and it's like, That's okay. So the next day I go down, I get on the boat, and you're tired and everything, and he looks me right in the eye and he says, "What are you getting on here for?" "Well, we're going to fish a tournament." He said, "Hell, you used up all your luck yesterday. Get off the boat." This next story I'm going to tell you, hopefully it doesn't offend anybody in the room, but if I don't use these words, it ain't going to come out. We're fishing Stuart light tackle, and ladies and gentlemen, we are not on the bite. I'm sorry, we aren't, Chip. And these boats are calling in fish right and left, and we've all been anglers, and you kind of look around at the bridge and keep doing that. Finally, I said to Chip, "Chip, we're not on the bite." And he looked down at me and he said, "Well, I tell you what, if you don't think we're on the bite, you take your left flat line and put a half hitch around your you-know-what, and we'll see if we're on the bite or not." Well, guess what? I turned around and I said, "We're in a great place. We don't have to move. We're fine." From the early days of the Sheldon Midget, first Temptress, to the beautiful John Bayless, Old Reliable, that Chip now is running, he's been a total success. Moving the fishing schedule has never been an obstacle, whether it be Florida, North Carolina, the Bahamas, Mexico, or the Pacific. And proof of that is in 2004, the owner of the Old Reliable, Mr. Nick Smith, who is present, and Chip teamed up to catch 500 fish, billfish, on a fly rod. And that's an absolutely incredible feat for not only Chip, not only Nick, but Gracel, the whole crew. Is a fabulous deal. Several years ago in closing, I asked Chip what was the most memorable and proudest thing about his career. Without any hesitation, none whatsoever, he said, "My mates. I am proud of the success they have all enjoyed." And I think that kind of sums up what Chip Shafer is all about. It's not about him.
I know we're running late. Chip, 1 second. Nick Smith, you got 2 words. I got to make it real short. I'm running late. Nick, did you want to say something about this incredible guy? Let him run up here real quick. I'm breaking all the rules. I'm going overtime, but with stories like that and these 5...
Thanks, Kip. Well, I'm not going to bore you with a few hundred stories that I could tell you about Captain Chip. Maybe one of these days we'll get together and do that later on. I do want to say, by the way, congratulations to the 5 captains that are coming into the honor roll tonight. I know some of them. Bill Curtis, my dad and I fished with you. You're one of his favorites, and God bless him. He enjoyed fishing with you a lot. We both got our first permit with you, and we caught a bunch of bonefish with you. Captain Chip and I had known each other a long time when we got together on this fly fishing deal about 10 or 11 years ago. And we'd fished against each other. I'd fished with him in Cancun. We'd caught a lot of fish together. And I started telling him about this fly fishing idea that I came up with after my good friend, Captain Bud Gramer, got me hooked up on the fly fishing over in Guatemala. And Chip was pretty interested in the job that he was on a boat called the Black Sheep was coming to an end because of health in the family of the owners. And Chip and I spent a lot of time talking about the concept. It was going to be a little bit different deal. We were going to be in the Pacific. We were going to travel around up and down the Pacific coast. And I told Chip that, I had some ideas that we'd catch a whole bunch of fish. And as I tend to do, I overkilled it a little bit, and we carried this thing on because this conversation was probably going on for a couple of months, but I never had anybody work for me before on running my boat. I'd always run my own boat, and I had my own ideas on how to do it, and I'm sure Captain Chip was thinking, I don't know if I can put up with this guy or not. Anyway, I'll tell you what impressed me the most about Captain Chip Shafer. You've heard a lot of accolades about him, and they're all true. Great guy, great human being. But I'll tell you what he said to me that pretty much sealed the deal. He said, "I want to fish." And we shook hands and we put the deal together, and that was that. And we've had a lot of success together. I've had a lot of fun. I hope he's had a lot of fun. I hope we got a few more fish to go, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Captain Chip.
Captain Chip Shafer, please come up and accept your award. Congratulations. I know you want to go to the mic. Not yet.
No, not yet.
Hold your award there.
Hope I got my zipper up. Let me check. You never know at my age anymore. Of my mates that are here, please come up if you would. Get a picture together. Mike.
Mike
Art.
Everly, Art,
Graysel.
come on up. Mr. John Bayless, you're
John
included.
Bayless, hell, he's already here.
Hell to call him a mate at this age, but come on up, John. Whoa. Oops. White asses there. Tree jumper.
See.
Hold on. Mike's all yours, Chip.
Okay. John Bayless stole most of my thunder. I was just going to read my mates' names out. Now half my thing's gone.
I got faith in you to do just fine. It's like one of the Academy Award speeches, right?
it
There's
is.
stuff in there.
I'd like to to the Academy. I tell you, it's. I want to comment first on just how neat it is to have a thing.
Come here.
Okay, is this right? Just
I want those people over there to hear you.
how terrific of a thing it is to have something like this, because I've seen people tonight that I haven't seen for a long time. A lot's been said about Hillsborough. Barkey was speaking about it, and oddly enough, in the winter of 1973, nobody knew me then, or nobody here in fishing or anything. I was the mate on the Delu 3, Captain Lou Klopstein out of Hillsborough. You didn't know that, did you, Barkey? No. And tonight, I ran into Robin Thorne. He was on the green lights that year. And all I can remember fishing with Lou is that occasionally we caught a fish, but we did hit the bridge one day. You may remember that. And I'm not going to say anything more about that, because if I poke much fun at that, I'll hit the next bridge I encounter. So I'm not enough said about that. But I ran into Robin. I hadn't seen him in years. And like I say, I can't remember a whole lot about the fishing that we did, our success fishing. I remember Joe and Griff and all those guys. I was right beside John Whitmer and a super mate he had, Wayne, who helped me out so much when I knew so very, very little from the Gulf Coast. I don't know what's become of Wayne, but he was John Whitmer's mate on the Miss Jean 7 that Lou was tied up beside of. But anyway, although Rob and I may have not caught much, we damn sure kept 2 bar stools warm at the Starlight Lounge that winter. But I couldn't believe, Barkey, when you brought up my old Captain Lou on the Delu. He's not alive, is he? He can't be. No. Well, Robin is. Hell, he might be. On a little more serious note, although we do hate getting serious, but on a little more serious note, it's the people that y'all have been hearing about tonight, the stuff they did in fishing, Bill and Joe Mott, who I was here to Joe Mott when I first got out of the service and just started fishing there that one time there in Hillsborough. and all the other individuals, and the individual to follow me tonight, you can't imagine how humbling it is to be mentioned in the company of these men. It's just I'm so proud and so humbled by this. I was anchored up, waiting for Nick to come. I was anchored in front of Puerto Magdalena. There's a good friend of mine here, Dave Campbell. Dave, are you here? Okay, Dave, who's helped me out a lot out there on the West Coast. He knows where Puerto Magdalena is. Some of y'all don't, but it's in Mag Bay where we do a lot of striped marlin fishing. And guys out there like Dave have been so helpful to me coming from the Atlantic, knowing nothing and helping me to kind of get tuned in on those. But anyway, I was there anchored waiting, and the phone rang, and it was IGFA calling me that I'd been selected to be a legendary captain or the Hall of Fame. And I thought, damn, boy, that's strange, weird. Because, you never think of yourself as meritorious of something like this, that I've been honored with being selected. And I thought, this program's only 2 years old. How the hell can they be at the bottom of the barrel already, this early in the thing? I mean, there's guys, there's guys that study their fishing so closely, and they know this and they know that, and they know I hear guys asking about how's the current running today? What's it doing? And I'm fishing the same place fish there long. Hell, if I know where the current's doing, I don't know what to do with it. What do you mean? They study and plan and know. Guys like Steve Lasley out there, super. That guy's like a human sonar, And all I do is just sort of wing it, and I have all my life. I've depended on damn good mates, and that saved me through a lot of it. Thank the Lord. But I thought they must select 3 or 4 of them. Then the last one they draw a name out of a hat. That could be the only one, and I got lucky. Anyway, it's like I say, it is so humbling and such an honor to be here with these people, to be mentioned in the same name with the folks that have been selected for this. Well, John stole about half my speech because I was just going to, out of my respect and to honor him, I was going to read a list of my mates. But that's all that's already been done. Thanks, John. So I'm going to have to kill some time doing something else here. I made it for a couple years. And was fortunate enough to go to the bridge. Thanks to this individual here. Where are you at, Monty? Monty Howe. Would you stand up, Monty, please? That gentleman gave me my first job driving a boat in 1974. And sold me that same boat 4 years later at the same money he had in the boat. You don't see that very often. And that was back in the days when boats actually appreciated in value. Something I don't think they do anymore, do they, Nick? But because of that, a lot of guys know a lot of things. You got Peter, people like that. Well, I made it for 2 years back before monofilament appeared on the scene for a leader. So I tell you what, I can show you one hell of a haywire twist. Still can. But I don't know half the knots that we use in monofilament, so I feel very inadequate in this type of company. I've made a specialty of hiring really good and been blessed with such good mates that all I've had to do is drive the boat, put the autopilot in a direction I want to go. You get there, you turn it around. I think me and Guernsey fish on the same page a lot. I liked what I heard today. But we sort of wing it. So many of these guys, they're really tuned into stuff. If we are, it's pretty subconscious, isn't it, Bart? Pretty subconscious. Anyway, like I say, the vast majority of the success that I've enjoyed in fishing has been having just great mates in the cockpit. And I just want to give some thanks to other aspects of the deal here tonight. I want to thank, this is pretty trite, but I want to thank my mother and father for encouraging my love for hunting and fishing and encouraging me to enjoy the outdoors. And I think that's so important with any of our kids that do show a bend for that, to encouraging it, because it's I think it can lead to such great things in your life. Not necessarily as a vocation, but at least as one of the best avocations that we can come up. So I give thanks to them. I want to give thanks to an individual, the captain that I worked for in 1974, who's old now and getting in pretty bad shape. John and I both stopped by and visited him. He lives in Hatteras, North Carolina. Whenever I'm up in North Carolina, I try to get by and get old Emery out. But it's Emery Dillon on the Early Bird, who I worked for in 74. And John, probably you worked for in 75, 76, 70, a couple of years. Yeah. And he is a great guy. And he taught everybody who worked for him so much about what I call the ethics of fishing, the how to treat your fellow fishermen, how to treat your parties, not going out there to see how the maximum money you can extract from a given party on a given day, but giving them your all. And he's got a number of us who owe him a lot for having instilled that in us. Captain Emery Dillon on the Early Bird, great individual. And Emery deserves it. He's one of those guys that was in a small area fishing. You never heard much about him, but he's terrific, and very, very formative for John and I, at least, and several others too. I want to thank Monty for giving me my first chance at running a boat, and we've had fun and been great friends ever since. And that's going back to 1974. I'd like to thank the board of members of Oregon Inlet Fishing Center. When I bought the boat from Monty, I bought it because to be a member of the Oregon Inlet Fishing Center out of Oregon Inlet, North Carolina, you had to own your own boat. That obviously wouldn't work today with the price of things, but I bought that boat to gain membership there, and by doing that and being elected to membership there, it allowed me to fish around men like Omi and Tony Tillett. Omi received this award last year, and let me tell you, to receive the same award that Omi Tillett received, being a North Carolina from, just makes you feel, and I think Charles, makes you feel so inadequate, doesn't it, Charles, really, to be put in the same league with Omi Tillett. But to fish with Omi and Tony Tillett, Murray Cudworth, another man, y'all. The 3M guys know Murray Cudworth because he's one of the finest sword fishermen ever was, but to fish with men like Murray Cudworth, Lee Perry, not always the greatest fisherman, but maybe the most enthusiastic one that ever was. Let's see, who else have I put down here to not forget? And just a host of others. Oh, Sam Stokes, ball of fire in those days. Sam Stokes on the Fighting Lady. I don't know if any of you know him, but he was a good mentor at fishing. These were all great guys. A lot of them were not heard out of much outside of North Carolina because typically, if you fished out of North Carolina, you didn't do a whole lot of traveling. Billy Baum, who many of you know, did. But these guys that were really great North Carolina fishermen, most of them fished in the summertime and then built boats in the winter, ergo becoming the terrific boat building center that place has become. But that was pretty typical. You fished in the summer and you built boats in the winter. And it was some great boat builders and fishermen. All right, where are we here? I want to thank a good friend in Florida. I moved from Stuart, Florida, at Monty's idea. This was a great business move. Monty said, we've been in Stuart for 3 years, and we're really not getting too far. Some of the people there at that time, I went fishing a little bit too early, and I got back a little bit too late. Maybe we tried a little too hard. I don't know. It was we weren't quite as union as you should have been there at that time. And I'm not knocking Stuart. It's a great place, and I've loved fishing there for years. But Nani said, let's move up to Fort Pierce. And I did that in 1976, and it was the best business move we ever made because it gave us some great new fishing grounds to the north. Everything north of Stuart in those days was almost like unknown. It was, nobody fished. Even that recently, you weren't fishing up there off Cape Canaveral and stuff. So it gave us a great spot to fish, and it just worked good business-wise. A lot of new people, a lot of citrus people and all. But where I'm leading to is when I pulled into the dock that first evening, I pulled this 42-foot North Carolina nice-looking boat up beside a 30-foot T-craft with a guy on board of it. Well, the guy was Sam Crutchfield. And he could have said, Jesus Christ, who's this asshole coming in here from nowhere, But he didn't. He said, hi, I'm Sam Crutchfield. And there began one of the best friendships I've got. That man is a talented fisherman. a great hunter. He's a musician. He'll kill a duck passing overhead that I won't even pick my gun up for. One of the best shots, best hunters you've ever seen. But what I'm getting to is Sam showed me so much of Florida. He could have said, I'm hell with this guy. But he showed me all about the freshwater fishing, all he could about saltwater fishing in the area. Took me hunting, and it's just been a great friend. He couldn't have treated me any nicer than he did, a stranger that he didn't know. I'm going to tell another thing. I'm going to give Sam Crutchfield credit for another thing. And I believe Mark Willis was working for him when they discovered. Mark, where are you at? Somewhere here. Sam discovered that a tail and sailfish that we would troll all over and never get him to color up or raise or do anything was a complete sucker if you just free-spooled the bait right by him. No movement whatsoever. If that thing looked alive, he'd run from it. But if it looked like it was an easy meal dead, he'd pick that thing up. So that's become I guess that would be almost a forerunner of prospecting, although Sam and us, we only used it when we actually saw a fish tailing. But I want to give Sam credit for that, and he immediately pointed it out to me, that particular fact. So everybody in the room, Sam Crutchfield was the first person I know of to figure out that a sail has a lot of buzzard in him. And a great fisherman and a fella who more than I would deserve to be here. He's an all-round outdoorsman. So I want to put in a word for my friend Sam. Okay. Another thing that's important is obviously the parties. Brad here was one of my best. He was such a good party, he got so tired of burning up in the boat that he actually bought me my first generator so we could get air conditioning, which is a hell of a fine party, I tell you, when you got a charter boat. But tonight, I like to think about some of the old-timers, and I want to think about some of the good ones that I had. I had a lot of parties, and I appreciate every one of them through the years when I was in the charter, from the family that would come once a year, every year, that was your bread and butter, to the great parties that would live in Florida, say, during the sailfish season, and would come when you called them when it was good. Now, that's a party for a charter boat. Somebody that when you say it's good, they can come. And I want to remember a couple of them, especially tonight, who have long gone on. Y'all may know a lot of them. Y'all may know of them, but one of them is Bob Herder from Ocean City, Maryland, who used to, just a top-notch fella. Bob Herder. If you know him, you love him. He's a golden oldie. And another one who used to come up and fish with me a lot up in Fort Pierce, who's long gone now, but y'all may remember from the Kelly K, Bob Kent's. And I would hope some of you would know Bob Kent's, top-notch individual. Anyway, I just want to be thankful for all the parties that can make things happen for me to keep us going. All right. Although I may have some good traits, I can't fix shit. I can't repair anything. I'm not mechanically inclined. So this is not a good thing to be in the boat business, in the charter boat business. But I do always have a long list of men who can fix anything if I can get them to the work site. And I want to think of a few of them that so helped me. One is an individual that helped me so much mechanically and boat work, and was a great fisherman and a friend of both Monty's and mine, Tom Daughtry, who had Sportsman Boat Works for a while, which was Omi Tillett's shop when Omi Tillett gave up. I don't know if any of you know Tom Daughtry, but I want his name to be mentioned here tonight in this gathering, because he was a great fisherman and a great friend and a great helper to anyone. Other men, a man that we lost right recently, last month, who was a mechanic who saved my rear end many a time, Buddy Jolliffe from Wanchese, North Carolina. He wasn't a yacht mechanic, but he was a mechanic that you wanted on your side if you needed something done on a charter boat. He was the kind of guy that if you're going to drift ashore on a deserted island where there's a junk heap and some coconuts, he'd come up with a way of combining that stuff where you were going to get off that island now. He was the kind of man you need on your side. Some other people who've helped me out like that was a mechanic named Zach Sheremy. He was fun to work with, but he was a pure T Cajun from Bayou Lafourche, and he was fun to work with because I like to hear him talk. He had that good accent. And let's see. And I'm gonna tell you, there's another man in this room who saves my rear end regularly now, Jody Randolph. Jody, stand up, and take a bow, please. I have him on I have him on a plane to Guatemala or Costa Rica or Mexico all the time now. But that's so important, and we never hear about these guys behind the scenes in this sport that keep us running. All right, I'll get to the end of this thing here right quick here now. Thank God I didn't read that list, right? For the last 10 years, I've been on a private boat. And I think all of us who do that type of work, I just want to give thanks to the owners like Nick who spend tremendous amounts of treasure and time to literally kind of support our habits. He's supporting his habit, but he's really supporting mine too, and all of us who love to fish. Don't say how much. No, I can't, Nick. I won't. I don't even know. But I want to thank our owners. And lastly, I want to also thank my wife Terry and my two daughters Julia and Georgia, who thank God Georgia's going to graduate from college this spring, finally, thankfully. But I want to thank them for their help and patience. Terry, when we had a charter boat, Terry ran all that. All I had to do was go fishing. And I want to make a quick observation on our sport. I'm not the flats and all that. I don't know too much about, but the offshore. Can you imagine how something like what we do with the bill fishing evolved? Can you imagine a reconnaissance unit from outer space coming down here and saying, we noticed some strange behavior. These dominant organisms spend tons of treasure and time, and they go out in these boats on the ocean all over their world, and they catch these big fish, and then they let them go. We have no idea what this behavior is. But isn't it wonderful that something like that has developed? And I've been so proud, and I've had the best life doing this. I've had so much fun. And even to this day, sometimes when I'm moving Nick's beautiful 64-foot bayless from point A to point B, a lot of that involves travel at night. And you're going along, all the systems are running. That ain't all the time, but all the systems are running. And you're going along at your 9-knot nighttime speed. And there's thousands of stars up there. And you know what? I feel like I'm the king of the world. I'm so glad to have been able to do this, and thank y'all so much.
That kind of tells you why he's the leader of the sport. He's very thankful for everybody that's helped him get there, but the teacher he was, the people he's brought along is incredible. Before we get into our last and final, I would like to thank everybody that came tonight, not only for your support of the IGFA, this event, and your favorite captains, but I also like you for how quiet you've been, the respect you've shown to each and every one of these people that have won an award. Thank you very much for your cooperation and your respect to everybody that attended tonight. I know we're running over, but you're only going to hear these stories once, and you'll appreciate them, I'm sure, the rest of your lives, knowing what these people have given back to us. Last but not least, and I got a feeling he might be able to top Chip in talking. Captain Bart Garnezy. You got some more coffee for everybody? Everybody get a fresh cup of coffee? Another dessert, round of desserts, a couple cocktails. It's going to be a while. Born in New York, Bart Garnezy grew up in Hillsborough Inlet in the early 1950s. His father, Dan, who ran the marina and the L&S fleet of drift boats, was his first teacher, but the Hillsborough captains and mates were his second family. And he watched, listened, and absorbed as much as he could from some of the era's best. In 1968, Bart was in Vietnam, flying helicopters over the jungle, drawing enemy fire to pinpoint their locations. He was shot down 5 times, sent home for rehab, awarded numerous medals and decorations, and then returned to the docks to pursue his bill fishing passion and the rest of an extraordinary career. Bart Garnezy began working for Stuart Campbell, the great late Stuart Campbell, in the early 1980s. For 30 years, the pair traveled the world on the Chunda in search of billfish, setting 16 light tackle records along the way, including an 820-pound blue on 16-pound line and an 872 on 30. Guernsey is recognized worldwide for his superb fishing and boat handling skills. Charles Perry insists Bart innately knows what a marlin is doing under the surface when no one else even sees it. Add in his excellent communication and teaching skills, vast knowledge of boats, exacting preparations before every trip, and a knack for fixing almost anything, and it is clear why Bart Garnezy ranks among the finest in the sports fishing arena. I'd like to bring up at this time Charles Perry and Peter Wright to speak on his behalf. It's payback time, Charlie.
Can't do that. Thank you. Well, I don't know if I can, I'm not sure I can follow the speakers that we've had here this evening. I'm not good at this at all. But I have to say that anything that they can donate or give to Captain Bark is deserved, by far. I was very, very fortunate to be able to have worked with him for 14 years. And during that time, we have caught we've had some incredible fishing. We've done incredible fishing, and thanks to Mr. Stuart Campbell, we have been to some exotic places and fished in incredible conditions with the best we could have at that time. And to me, it could not be any better. To do what I do and what Bart has done, Mr. Campbell has to have a lot of credit because he has gave us that opportunity to be in the most exotic places and fish some of the best fishing that anyone could imagine at the time in those places. To Mr. Campbell's credit, I will say that he, in my opinion, and I've seen some of the best anglers in the world. I've been very fortunate to see some really good anglers in a lot of good places. And I saw the famous Jojo DeGuercio catch big, giant bluefin tuna. I've seen some of the finest fish in a lot of places, and I think Stuart Campbell was the finest angler I've ever seen, without a doubt. And when I say that, and Miss Nikki she is here, and she will, I hope, agree with me on this. He was that kind of an angler because of Bart Garnezy. Bart Garnezy taught Stuart when Stuart was a very, very intelligent person. He was the top of his line through all of his schooling. And he's difficult to teach. He was an engineer. He wanted to know that he was doing it the right way. And when he wasn't, Bart took all the patience in the world and taught him and made him see, in many roundabout ways, we went a lot of different directions, for him to do it the way that Bart knew was best. And in the long run, Stuart would see that. He would see it. But it was, at times, I was amazed at a lot of times at the patience Bart took to teach Stuart as to be the angler that he was. And I have to give Bart the credit, a lot of the credit to be that. He had a good pupil, but he had a stubborn pupil at times. And he taught him very well. And together, those two you could not travel and go to places in the world with any other better couple than those two, because they complemented each other. And Barky, with his sense of humor, made everything worthwhile in the most difficult situations, in the places we would be, difficult times. Barky made it humorous at some point. And Stuart would not like to laugh very often. It was a rare occasion he'd laugh, but you'd always see that little smile go on his face. When the rest of us were cracking up, Stuart would smile because he knew that it was definitely funny. And we fished in quite a few different countries, in quite a different places. And Barkey would always, at any place we would go, would fit in with the people there. He was so well in tune with the people wherever he was at that made the whole situation work. And when we were in a lot of different places, that's important. That's very important. In the Ivory Coast of Africa, to get along with the people, the native people there, and to make them feel comfortable with you, because we're coming in with all the fancy stuff and all the stuff. He did that, and he had his crew to do the same thing. He's one of the best teachers for his crew, and in a lot of cases we learn from example, and that's how I learned, was just by watching him. It was great. I must give credit to tell you what kind of guy he is. He has friends wherever he goes, and his friends, the people that he has here tonight, are all the pilots, which I would like for them to stand. For the friends of his that came, that were all of his friends in Vietnam that were survived. This is the people that survived flying helicopters in Vietnam for our country. They're the soldiers that Barkey flew with, and they thought enough of him to all be here tonight. I think we all should stand and give them applause. Most of us are fishermen, and that's what we enjoy doing. When we think of real heroes, they are heroes. And trust me, I've heard stories that still thinking about them, the hair stands up. And those guys are the real heroes of our country. And I want to give them respect. And Barkey was their leader in a lot of the situations that they were there. He was the head. And I'm not too good at all this, so I'm going to make this short. I know we're running over time, as Skip said. Oh, I do want to mention one thing. As Chip said, believe it or not, Chip, I worked on the Delu 3 too. I worked for Lou Klopstein's. But I will say this, there's nowhere I can imagine that or any type of thing that could be asked of me by Bart that I wouldn't hesitate to do. And he wouldn't have to tell me what we were going to do or anything. He'd say, I need you to do this. That would be me. And I would do that anywhere, anytime. He's one of the finest that I've ever met, and I've been in this industry all my life. They don't come any finer than Bart Garnezy.
I think the Bart Garnezy story rotates to a large degree upon his self-deprecating sense of humor. He tells jokes on himself that you know aren't really true, but they're amusing. And he is a superb organizer. When you go on a trip with Bart, you've got every spare part, all the line. Wait a minute, once we didn't. We went to Africa one time, and I had this giant duffel bag made out of some kind of kryptonite cloth that was indestructible. And we packed everything up, and when we got to Abidjan, my bag wasn't there. The sad part is that we had at least one critical part of every rod and reel that we had brought with us. A butt, the line, the reel itself. We did not have one outfit that we could put together to try to catch a world record blue marlin on. There was part of it in my bag. Well, we were in Abidjan, and my bag was in a little town that I'd never heard of. It was 250 miles southeast of Timbuktu. That's as lost as a bag can be. Well, I think Charles gave me, somebody gave me a T-shirt, Bart gave me a pair of shorts, and for 2 days I lived like Crocodile Dundee. I threw shampoo and my clothes in the bidet every night and stomped on them and hung them out on the lamp to dry so we could go fishing the next morning. But we wound up every time I went to Africa with Bark and Stewart, we caught at least one world record, except once. That time, the people we were with caught a world record. But Bark is a lot of fun, absolutely crucial part of being a big game fishing guide, captain, mate, wherever you fit in. You really need to realize that we're not in the fishing business, we're in the entertainment business. When the fishing is good, we try to catch more than our share. When the fishing is good, we try to show our customers and our passengers a good time. Bark is a master of the universe at that. He's a hell of a guy. He's a good friend of mine. We still have a lot of fun together. And he and everyone that's been in here tonight deserves to be in this place. And I have heard the names mentioned by these men of a whole bunch of people that you are going to see inducted here in the future should you come. Barky, it's always a pleasure to fish with you. Nikki, love you madly, and good luck to everybody.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Charles. Captain Bart Garnezy, get your butt up here. Congratulations. Smile, guys. Say sex, Barky.
That's all I can do is say it. Say, I told you.
Well, Bart, the mic is yours. Here, I'll hold that thing.
Thank you very much. Chip, rather, I really appreciate you keeping it brief because I know we're running late. Skip, is there a teleprompter up here? A teleprompter?
Right there.
Oh, okay, I got to just check it on that. All right, well, listen, I got to tell you, this whole thing has changed since last year drastically. Last year, everyone had 5 minutes to talk, so I was a little concerned about that because I've been doing this a long time and I had a lot of stuff I needed to say. And obviously, we don't do that anymore. So what I did was I was kind of worried about running overtime, and I wanted you to know that I read the rules in the IGFA, and the reason for that is I work for Stuart Campbell. And Stuart Campbell was on the Board of Trustees, and he was on the Rules Committee. And if you ever knew Stuart Campbell, you knew that if he was on the Rules Committee, he was the chairman of the Rules Committee, and he made the rules. So obviously the crew, we all had to know the rules because about 3 hours every day he would make sure we knew the rules. And one of the rules that a lot of y'all didn't know was that if you were to receive award from the IGFA, you were given 5 minutes, up to and including, but not to exceed 5 minutes, except if you're telling a story about the MC. I can't do this to Skip, so I'm going to tell you a story about Mark Sosin. And it's a true story, it really is. Years ago, I'm saying 25 years ago, we had a little 37-foot merit boat in Venezuela. And my buddy Tommy Green over there, we're at lunch one day, and he's trying to sell me on the idea of taking Mark down there and doing a show for his TV show. And he's been doing this for so long that the first 3 or 4 years were in black and white, and been at it quite a long time. And he's written thousands of articles in the fishing magazine. So we went ahead, and Stuart was game for anything, so he just went ahead and said, go bring him on down. So we go down there in this 37 merit boat, and I'm going to just digress momentarily. Y'all have a minute. Now that if you can get anything to drink in here, good luck. I'm just fixing to perish. I'm telling you. And Capt Moby O'Brien over there would fight for a Vino Tinto. I'll tell you that. So We're getting ready to go down there, and I'm over in Merritt's Boatyard the other day, by the way, and that's the only boatyard they'll let me in. And I was walking down looking at all these new boats, and they got 87-foot boats and 72-foot boats, they got big old boats. And they're made of space-age polymers. I mean, they're made of graphite and cellulite and dynamite. Roy knows all this stuff. He really does. And Vegemite, they got some of that in there too. And right in the middle of it is a little 37-foot Merritt boat. And that is the most beautiful boat in the world. And it still is. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And it's for sale. That's right. That's right. So I hope that client's with you, by the way, Carl. I'm trying to help you out here. It's just a little piece of the action. So anyway, I got looking at that boat, and I realized, do you know what they made those boats of? Do you know what they made them out of? Trees. This is true. They made them out of trees, and how they did it, Buddy and Alan would go out in the woods with a chainsaw, and they would cut down these trees. And they usually did it on somebody else's property, I want you to know that. And they'd cut them up, and they'd make these really beautiful boats. So we had this little boat down there. And I'm really glad that Mark doesn't have that stopwatch that he used to keep up here. And so he comes down to Venezuela, and he had these two cameramen with him. And they had never done a saltwater show before. They'd done these bass shows. And boy, there's just nothing scrappier than a bass, is there? I'm telling you. Whew, man. Wow, that's something. So we're going out, and it's kind of choppy. It usually is in Venezuela, and we're running along here in our little tree boat, and we're going along, and one of the cameramen is down below with Mark, and Mark and Stuart are down there, and they're discussing what they're going to do when they win this ME or SB or whatever they're going to win. And I got the other cameraman whose name is Joe, and he's up on the bridge with me. And I don't know if you've ever seen these cameras that they used to use, but they look like a shoulder-mounted anti-tank weapon sort of a thing. And they were amazing when it came to chipping up the varnish and aluminum and whatnot. And so we go out, and we're doing what all fishermen do. We're just telling stories on the way out, you know. And we're having a great storytelling time. And I got to just go back a little bit to these fishing magazines. Geez, they make me crazy. And Mark's written like 2,000 of the things, right? And they talk about when you're running out, what you're supposed to look for. You know, you look for like a weed line or a kern edge or a color change. It's rough. And you're supposed to be up in the tower. Jeez, it takes me 5 minutes to get in the tower. So I'm not going up there, plus it's rough. And the seas are hitting the isinglass. You can't see anything anyway. So how do you know where to stop? See, you could go 8 miles offshore. You could go 28 miles offshore. There's fish everywhere. You don't have to. You just got to find a good spot. So what you do is you wait till whoever's telling a story is finished, and then you stop. I mean, that's so logical, you know. And if you stop in the middle of the story, you're rude. You know, you don't do that. And as far as where to go, that's a no-brainer. Skip Smith's fishing down there. Captain Obie O'Brien's fishing down there. You follow them. That's what I do, you know. I know how to do this, though. So we go out there, and we get done with a good story, and we stop, and we just chunk our mess out the back there, and we start fishing. And we hadn't gone a couple hundred yards, and up pops a white marlin. And Mark runs over, and he grabs that rod. Oh, man, he looked like Michael Jordan. He flips that thing down, drops back to him, got him on, right? White marlin's going over here, the cameraman's looking over there, and it's kind of rough, and I'm trying to get the cameraman to sort of semi-aim toward the fish. I got a little confused there for a moment, and that happens, and the fish got up around in front of the boat, and I ran over him. Damn the luck. So we went, and of course Mark was kind of pouting a little bit. So we chunked our mess out the back again, and I'm thinking of updating my resume, and we keep chugging along there a little bit. And we got everything out the back, and pretty soon, boom, 2 white marlin pop up. Stuart hooks one, Mark hooks one, and I got the cameraman, I kind of turning his head a little bit like this, you know. Damn, I ran over another one. But we did get one of them. So Mark kind of looks over at Stuart, and he says, you know, we've had 3 white marlin on, and he's run over 2 of them. I said, does he do that a lot? And Stuart looked at him, he says, no, not usually, but he's getting pretty good at it, isn't he, you know? So, but we had a good time. We made a nice movie, and it was good, and we really did. And what else was I going to lie to you about? I said, I was working on something here. I don't know what it was. Anyway, I'm sorry, Mark. I hope I haven't hurt your feelings. We had a great time, and Mark's a real pro and a great guy to fish with. When you first meet him, you think he's a big old grouchy guy, but after you know him a while, a big old grouchy guy, I'll tell you that. And it doesn't change much, you know. Anyway, I was a little concerned about, taking too much time, but like I said, Chip made it easy for me. I really have to agree wholeheartedly with Chip on one thing. If you're ever going to do anything in this business, hire the best crew you can get. The mates make it all happen. I always hired guys, first of all, that I liked, that I respected, and that would keep me out of trouble. That was a sort of an issue. But and there's a whole bunch of them here tonight. It's Charles Perry, Spencer Stratton, Obie O'Brien, Cousin Jimmy Guernsey, Jeff Thomas, Big Ron Hinman, a whole slew of them. And I know what y'all are thinking. You're thinking that it's really nice that they all came to see me get indicted. What is that word? Indicted? Yeah. To get indicted. And I got to tell you the truth. I want to be honest about this. I don't live in Florida anymore. I live out in New Mexico, and so I don't get over here very often. And they heard I was going to be here, and I owe them all money. So they come on down, for this. But anyway, I really appreciate this. This is a real honor for me. I want to thank Miss Nikki Campbell for putting up with us for all those years. Thank you.
Before everybody leaves, the 5 recipients that received the award, if you could stay and come up to the stage, I would like to have a group photo. At this time, I'd like to thank Mr. Rob Kramer for putting this together, Mr. Mike Myatt, and all your committee and your bosses at IGFA for putting this event together and letting us have it and give these guys the respect that they've earned and their due. At this time, again, I want to thank you for the respect you've shown tonight. I want you all to drive home safe, and I want to see you all back here again next year and keep supporting the IGFA. Thank you.